It is Andrew here with Easy Design, the only car audio show on the internet that's designed to help vehicle owners find the perfect audio equipment for their vehicles. This is December 26th, a day after Christmas. We're here joined with us today with Devin, who owns a brand new 2023 Acura Integra A-Spec. And then we're also joined by Matthew Davies. God, my brain just went blank. And he's going to be the one who helped us quote out the vehicle and everything else. So we're going to go live here in just a couple minutes. But again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you here in just a second. All right. This camera is supposed to autofocus, but it is not. Anyways, come on. Focus. Focus for me. Hey there, everyone. It is Andrew with Elevated Audio System Design. Man, this camera is going to make me super upset today. I will get that fixed here in a moment. But Easy Design is the only show on the internet designed to help vehicle owners pick out the perfect car audio equipment for their cars. We have no agenda. Recommendations are based on expectations and budget. Today is December 26, 2023. This is episode 6. And we have Matt here from Car Audio Revolution helping out Devin with his new 2023 Acura Integra A-Spec. Again, we have no agenda here other than to help and provide free advice for vehicle owners. I want to make it clear that we don't sell any product, nor do we offer any installation services through the show. So this is all unbiased, expert opinion stuff, without any intent of trying to sell anything or try to get you in the install bay. Please keep the chat clean and respectful, and then please know that all views expressed by our guest, whether that's our expert tech or our guest, are views of their own and do not represent their employers or any third party whatsoever. Now that we've gotten all that out of the way, let's introduce Devin here. He is the vehicle owner of this new 2023 Acura Integra. How are you doing today, Devin?
Pretty good. How about you?
Doing well, thanks. I do appreciate you joining and being a part of the show. You reached out to us a couple of weeks ago. It's taken us a couple of weeks to get you on the show. We had a couple reschedules and everything else, but what made you want to reach out to us in the first place?
I just picked up the car, and the stereo is just your very basic OEM crap in a sense. And then, but I've also been following you guys on Facebook for a little bit, and when you guys started doing the shows, I was kind of intrigued, and I was since I got the car, like one of the first things I wanted to do is update the stereo. And when I saw this happening, I was like, let's try to put two and two together and maybe see what happens, or at least get advice on what I'm maybe missing or what I should think about even further. So,
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for reaching out. Have you had other kind of systems in the past?
yeah, back in my younger years when I was in the late '90s, I actually did car stereo competition.
Oh, did you?
Went competed went to the USAC World Finals. I think it was in '97, '96 or '97.
Oh, nice.
And I actually placed 11th in the world. So,
Well,
I've
congrats
got
on that.
thanks. And I was actually a novice competing in the amateur class because they did not have a dedicated novice class for World Finals.
Nice.
So, I've been around the car stereo stuff for a little while, then got out of it. But I've always had the ear and the bug.
Yeah.
But you get married, have kids, lower priority.
Oh, yeah.
But now that my kids are a little bit older and I have a little more disposable income, a little bit.
Yeah.
It's I kind of got the bug again and want to do
Nice.
a little something. So.
Yeah, I feel like car audio is one of those things that we kind of come in and out of in terms of interest. When we have it, we're very, very happy, but then it doesn't take much to get us off that kick, whether it's just buying a new car and then being content with whatever you have, or whatever it may be, finances, whatever. But yeah, you were definitely in it during the heyday of car audio, the early or late 90s, early 2000s. That's when I got into it. And yeah, never competed back then, but that's pretty cool that you were able to and get up there. I'm sure you know a lot of the names that are still in the industry these days in terms of competing and stuff like that, but I've been introduced to a lot of those guys as well. And it was definitely a totally different game back then, because that was, I don't want to say before the invent of like DSP and stuff like that, because they had DSP in the early 90s, but it wasn't really widely used, and we definitely didn't have the computer software and everything else to really help us. It was more a lot of trial and error.
Yeah,
A lot of
how do you control EQTs and it's like the manual dialing of.
Yep.
And it's it's
Yeah.
definitely changed.
There's a lot of doing it by ear, but then using the audio control, like RTAs and stuff like that. So yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks again for being on the show. We really do appreciate it. Let's introduce Matt here. He is our guest. He's been our guest every episode so far. This is episode 6. So once again, thanks, Matt, for being on the show, helping out with this build.
Thanks for
What do you
having
think
me.
about this request whenever you first saw it come in?
Well, it's to do a full audio upgrade these days is especially on brand new vehicles, can be tricky depending on the vehicle, mainly because of what the factory does and how you have to integrate with it, and just simply how you have to integrate into these vehicles and retain everything and deal with the EQ curves, crossover points, all pass filters, ANC mics, this whole plethora of stuff you have to consider now. It can honestly be really difficult to hit sub $3,000 price points to address everything. This one, I think we were able to put together a very good audio system and still stay within budget, because there weren't too many hurdles with this vehicle, but there is one key one that I will address as we go along. But luckily, this one is a little more on the straightforward side. So it's
Nice. Well, thank you. I was trying to fix my camera here. Still blurry. Still super blurry.
all right.
It's all right. It's not like it's going to be online forever. So, yeah, let's jump into the build then. Once again, thanks, Devin. Thank you, Matt. Let's jump into the next screen here. And it's just kind of the slide deck here for the kind of a recap. Devin, when you reached out, you do not have a 2009 4Runner. Man, how did I end up doing that? Let's see. Is any of this? This has to be right. Come on. Give me 1 second here. Yeah, it has all the right product. I forgot to change one field here. So, expectations, stereo upgrade to OEM-Plus. Improve the richness, the power, the bass response. Not looking for like audio file quality or anything super loud. Mainly because we did want to stay within that $1,500 to $2,500 like absolute max. Really, we stuck to your request to stay around $2,000. But after doing some research, we really can't replace the stereo in there because the tablet style on the top of the dash screen that you have in there, and an overview of your subwoofer kind of desires 300 to 500 watts, nothing that's going to shake the car apart or anything like that, and something that can be kind of integrated into the trunk and still keep your trunk space. As far as the tweeters go, you're looking for soft dome tweeters, right?
Yep. Yeah, typically I'm a fan of the softer dome tweeters because that my experience in the past, any kind of metal dome tends to have like a harsher sound for me.
Yeah.
So
definitely. Matt, did you have anything? Let's see here. Based on everything here, do you think that you kind of were able to meet these expectations based on your design?
Yeah, I think so. We definitely put together a pretty good system. Most people are going to be pretty happy with it, especially at the price point. It's always tricky building audio systems for my regular customers or anybody else that has done audio not only in the past but anywhere in the 2000s or 90s, because as with everything else in the world, price points are extremely high. So expectations are usually, not lined up. Are not lined up. It's hard. You got to get the expectations in line as far as the dollars to performance. And so, somebody just coming into this for the very first time, maybe a 20-year-old or 21-year-old, that's all they've ever known is just a certain level, and they're you don't have to have that conversation. So that's honestly something we deal with every single day, especially with return customers to the industry.
Yeah. You know how many times I hear that from people? It's like, oh my God, that's way more than I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it seems like, Devin, you had a pretty good grasp on that. I assume that you were looking at audio equipment prior to jumping in or submitting the request, right?
Yeah.
You kind of know where everything falls.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do realize the budget is kind of tight, but it's also, I think it maybe present a good challenge for you guys as well. So
yeah. All right. I think so. Just as a rundown, the way we try to structure these builds, we start with the source and we go in order of the signal path, starting at the very beginning. And in this case, we're going to be using the Acura OEM stereo. We're going to go into the signal processing, whether that's internal or external EQ, channel assignment, time alignment, digital to analog conversion, stuff like that, which again, we're going to be relying on the OEM stereo to be doing all that since we can't really replace it. And due to budget restraints, we didn't really recommend anything in terms of DSP. From there, we kind of hop into the amplifier, and that's where we're going to increase the signal. These could be built into like an aftermarket stereo, in which case you get like 20 watts of power tops. Most of the time it's like 12 to 14, but then we go into external amps where we could boost this up to where we could actually feel the music and actually get something out of them. From there, we move into the transmission of the signal, which is just a fancy way of saying wiring, and then to the speakers, and then any physical interference such as rattles or vibrations, stuff like that, we could typically solve with sound deadening. We don't do that on every build. We don't recommend that on every build. It can be invasive. It can be very costly and time consuming, but in this case, we didn't really jump into that. But Matt, I'll let you take over from here.
Sure. So dealing with the factory signal on this particular vehicle, the channels of output there's only 4. So which is good. It's very simple as far as the output goes. The tweeters are piggybacked onto the mids in the door as far as their signal goes, and then they just have capacitors in line, so they don't blow up the tweeters, right? So as far as the channels of output, it's very simple: 4 channels, front, rear, left, right. The output of that signal. So if you were to run a pink noise, 20 hertz, 20,000 hertz, and see the entire frequency spectrum, the factory actually implements a crossover point around 40 hertz. It's a low pass crossover. And so, why would they do that? Well, they do that so they don't blow up their 6.5-inch speaker in the door if you like to absolutely just crank on it. So as it sits, that's not necessarily a problem as the factory has structured the audio system. It's a problem if you're trying to get good bass response, especially very low frequency bass response. So that's actually the only real big hurdle in this system, is we have to figure out how to combat that. Now, good news is it's not a brick wall. At 40 hertz, it doesn't just fall off the table. It's a 12 decibel slope at 40 hertz, so we can reintroduce some frequencies. Bring them back up that are in the 30 hertz range. So the amp I chose for that, so I chose a 5-channel ARC Audio X2 amplifier. Now, not only do these line of amplifiers have great sound quality, great power, it's very well regarded in the industry. It flies a little bit under the radar, to be honest with you, but it has all the specs that we would need. And ARC Audio actually makes a few components and designs and builds for other companies that just slap their name on them. So they're pretty immersed in the industry. But one thing specifically this amp has is that it has a bass boost function. Okay, that's great. That's not very uncommon. What is uncommon about it is that it can actually select what frequency you want to boost in the bass boost setting. So we can actually go all the way down to 30 hertz. I believe it goes up to like 80 or 90 hertz, and basically pull those frequencies back up. Now, normally I do this by putting playing pink noise and putting an RTA on it, so I can actually see and then dial it in from there. But that's kind of a unique feature, is we can actually reintroduce some of the low frequencies back up instead of using a standard bass boost, which is usually set at like 40 or 50 hertz, and you don't get to adjust that. It's just going to boost that particular frequency. So that's kind of a unique feature of this amplifier, as well as just being a very high quality amp. Now, it will be a standard 5-channel setup. So we'll have channel 1, 2, 3, 4 will be our front and rear speakers left and right, and channel 5 will be our subwoofer. And the subwoofer will be derived from all 4 channels. And we will be running straight high level in. So we'll just take the signal right off the factory stereo and run it straight into, they provide a 10-to-1 step down set of RCAs. So they, right in the box, they just look like regular RCA ends that have just wires coming off of them. But there's actually resistors in there that do a 10-to-1 step down, just like a line output converter would do. And we can reduce the signal input and drive that straight into our new amplifier.
And you want to make sure that you don't get those confused with other RCAs laying around your shop like I have, because you will end up with no volume out of the amp whatsoever. Devin, how's that sound to you?
I had to have that explained as well once.
How's that? Because the RCAs just look normal. They don't look like they have a step down in them or anything like that. They just look like cut RCAs. But how's it sounding to you so far?
It's sounding great. I'm also a fan of just keeping things pretty simple. So far what's laid out, I'm liking. I do have one question. I know some, like this car. My car also has the auto stop. Like if you're at a stoplight, engine shuts off. And I know some electronic components, especially amps, have issues with that. Does this amp have an issue with that, or is there provisions put in for that?
I would have to double check on that one, to be honest with you. Obviously, most amplifiers now, at least from major companies, put in circuits to combat that. However, if it doesn't, there are aftermarket pieces that we can purchase to put on that to help keep it on.
Okay.
So it's not horribly like I wouldn't go so far as change the amp recommendation if it didn't have that feature. So, or if it created a problem, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of new
That's a
cars
good
have
question.
that. And honestly, we've installed these into a lot of like Audi and stuff like that, which are notorious for having these. And it's kind of they call it brownout, where the voltage just dips below the minimum for the amp and the processor and stuff like that. Typically, the amplifiers have a little bit of capacitance within them to keep them kind of powered on. Like typically, we ran into that issue with just DSPs that are just doing like kind of low signal stuff. I'm looking it up right now just to see. But yeah, like Matt said, there are some pieces, and I even have some pieces on the shelf from Audison that are designed to just kind of jump in between the remote and just kind of keep it powered on during those kind of restart sequences. But yeah, I'm not seeing anything on here right now. But it does work down to, well, it doesn't say. So yeah.
And those third-party pieces, like Andrew was talking about from Audison, they're not that expensive that it's going to actually destroy the budget.
It's on there. It actually says start-stop vehicle compatible.
There you go.
So there we go. I'm glad they put that in there.
That's not overly surprising.
Thanks for that question, though.
Yeah, it's a great question, first off, because a lot of cars have that. But most modern companies like ARC, Helix, Moscone, Audison, they have definitely addressed that issue. It's usually on the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 amplifiers where they're still using technology based off of early 2000s, 90s, to 80s that you start running into these issues like that.
And by different tiers, you're just talking about just lower quality brands, right?
Yes.
All right. Cool. So yeah,
great question
though. So 1100 watt amp there, right?
Yep.
How does that split up, Matt?
So
I'm asking you a question I have the answer to right in front of me, but
sure. I'll have to pull
so I could answer it, or
sure, go for it.
Yeah. Andrew. So this amp, like I said, I've actually put this amp in a lot. The 1100.5 at 4 ohms, we have 150 watts per channel. Which based on the speakers that we're going to jump into, the Morels are always kind of a little power hungry. But then the monoblock channel at 2 ohms, we have 500 watts, which I'm sure Matt will know the bass hub better than I do in terms of its impedance. I don't know that.
It's a 2 ohm.
It's a 2 ohm. So yeah, you would have that 500 watts to the sub. But yeah, 150 watts, whether the 4 channels are 4 ohms or 2 ohms. So 150 watts across the board on there. It is bridgeable down to a 2 channel on that 4 channel aspect. So you could bridge channels 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 together to get 300 watts. So if you had if you wanted to set it up, I guess for mid bass drivers, you could definitely do that. But yeah, all right.
Cool. So kind of move on down the line here. If you have any more questions about how we're going to integrate or anything like that.
No. So far, it seems relatively simple.
Yep. Pretty straightforward so far. So we're going to, this is it's not a small amplifier. It's not huge, but most likely you're going to have to put it underneath the rear floor or something like that, and create some kind of mount for it. Perhaps usually those vehicles have some kind of styrofoam fillers or things like that underneath the rear floors. You might have to move some of that to remove it, modify it, things like that. But it shouldn't be too difficult to fit it in the vehicle.
Yeah, it's 12.5 by 6 inches.
Yeah.
So,
About
that-
average for 5 channels that are high powered. So
that's a tough one to get under the seat, like front seat.
yeah, especially in a car, car of that size, if you were,
Yeah.
doing, I don't know, something else.
Plus,
But
you might even have a bunch of modules under your front seat on a new Acura, between the electric seat motors and everything else. So that might not even be an option. It does only sit 2 inches off the ground, so it doesn't have a very tall profile, but still 12.5 by 6. It's kind of a big footprint.
Okay.
But it's only 1 amp. And I guess that's the saving grace for the amp.
so try to simplify it. Obviously we have 5 channels, 6 channels, 8 channels, 12. You got all kinds of just one chassis amplifiers now available. And I think Helix just dropped to 18 channels, so they're just continually going up higher and higher. But it's makes it easier, for running power wires and just kind of the architecture of the wiring.
Matt, it surprises me that this vehicle only has 4 channels of output.
Yep. Well,
Were
it
you
could have
surprised
had
when you saw
the.
that?
What's that?
Were you surprised on that whenever you found that out?
Not really. Well, I mean, obviously, it could have had the upgraded audio package, and then it would have been quite a bit different and a lot more hurdles. But considering, not to devalue the vehicle or anything, considering that Civics and all them, it's that's fairly common. It wasn't all that surprising. A little surprising that they only went with a straight 4 channel, but
Yeah.
I wasn't like blown away. So kind of move on here. So now we got the amplifiers all set. Move on to the speakers I selected for you. And just kind of, I'm gonna actually move back to the wiring a little bit. So in this particular amp, we can get away with 4 gauge, oxygen-free copper, 1 line. I chose the Metra V10 AK4, which is a solid amp kit. I'm using quite a bit. I know a lot of companies like those around our industry. So nothing crazy as far as the power wire goes. It's pretty simple. The speakers I chose. If we want to forward the screen, Andrew, at all, or you want to
Oh,
keep
this
going
is the screen.
Okay.
This is the screen.
Got it. All right. A little bit different this time.
Yeah. Trying to consolidate, keep
All right.
keep everything flowing. So yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
The 20 slide deck on the first episode was a little much.
Okay. So yeah, the speakers, there's quite a few speakers you could probably choose for this. Personally, I tend to use Morel and a couple other choice brands, but because you wanted the soft dome tweeters, I specifically went towards Morel for this. And that's one of the very big benefits of Morel. And one of the reasons I really like them is the tweeters tend to be very even. They're not going to melt your face or do anything weird or they're not going to introduce any excess frequencies to you. So they're going to play very natural to what the music should be. The mid bass, the mid woofers on those, they provide good mid bass. Are they off the charts? No, but you're not really going to find anything like that's just going to blow the door apart at this price point. But they're very accurate speakers. They're not crazy power hungry, but most, like Andrew said, most Morel speakers are they do better with a little bit of extra power. And we've had this conversation with Morel quite a bit, and they'll typically give you the green light to give them a little extra juice, and they perform better that way. So I think it's an excellent choice. We did components in the front, and then just did coaxes in the rear. There are technically tweeter locations in the rear, but because 80% of the sound that you hear in the front seats is from the front, you could double them up if you wanted to do 2 separate tweeters in the rear, but usually there's not a lot of point. You're just kind of there for rear fill, and so anyone riding in the back can at least somewhat enjoy the music. So, any questions about the speakers in particular that I chose for you?
No, I'm a little bit familiar with Morales from back in the day, so I have always liked them. So
Yeah, it's certainly a lesser known brand. It's on the same level, at least in my opinion, of Focal. This is kind of one of the most those two are the most associated brands to each other.
Yeah.
As you go up in their line, this particular set is not handmade, but as you go up in their lineup, they start introducing handmade speakers, just like Focal does. It's just one of those things. Morel tends to focus on smaller niche independent shops, as where Focal, not necessarily they don't do that. It's just they will sell to higher volume shops as well, and that's how they've gotten there. They do much more marketing than Morel does. So,
Oh yeah, Focal's really good at marketing.
They are,
like
but it's 2 very different types of sounds.
Yes.
It's and that's both of them are good. It's just what's your personal preference. So, and one of the reasons my last vehicle I ran Morel Elite, titaniums, and it's just great mid driver, but just like these tweeters, it's a very natural response. It's not trying to introduce anything that isn't there. As to where with Focal, you can typically get a little more adjustments as far as what it's introducing. And some people like that, some people don't. And it's just, what's your preference on that?
Yeah, you could always fine tune with DSP, right? So in my BMW, I'm running Focals, but yet in my other car, I'm running Morel. And I've ran Morels in previous vehicles and stuff like that. It really comes down to the application. Like the BMW, I'm limited on these like little 4-inch mid drivers in the doors, and Focal had a nice Kevlar set, a 4-inch tweeter or 4-inch component set for that vehicle. So I just ran those, and big upgrade over factory, but yeah. Like it comes down to application at the end of the day as well. So you have your preference, and yeah, I can enjoy both. But definitely, I like your recommendation on the Morel, especially because of the soft dome tweeters there, Matt. Morels have always been a nice, smooth, natural sound. So yeah, I like that you actually heard of Morel, Devin. So. Shows that you have been around the block here in the industry. So,
yeah, that's a funny thing. When you get into smaller specialty shops, like mine and Andrews, is you often have to spend a decent amount of time explaining brands to people, because a lot of the mainstream ones do a really good job of marketing, and as most of us know, just because you know the name doesn't mean it's the best option. So
right.
that's something we spend a fair amount, at least I spend a fair amount of time with. So yeah, so I think those who fit the bill for, especially if we're not doing DSP, we'll kind of try to get all the requirements without having the adjustments on the back end.
yeah.
And so yeah, the last piece of the puzzle there is the subwoofer. So lots of ways to do subwoofers, and this is kind of the fun part of music. It's definitely tends to be more personal preference part of music. Whether you want 20 15-inch subs, or you want one 8-inch sub, or everything in between, and how much space are you willing to give up? What's the fit and finish of it? Functionality. There's so much to consider when picking a subwoofer and how it's going to look and feel in the vehicle. You requested that you prefer not to give up any cargo space.
Yep.
Which is very, very common. It's something I love customers when they say that. Most of my customers are I want to hear it, not see it customer. And so spend a lot of time hiding things away, making it look factory, and doing things like the subwoofer I picked out. Now, in all transparency, I have not actually used this particular subwoofer. I have heard recommendations from other guys that I trust, and it's very good for what it is. It will fit in the spare tire of the vehicle and kind of sit underneath the floor, so that you won't have to give up any space. Now, is it going to make your teeth chatter or tickle your nose? Probably not. But it should be very accurate with a little bit extra. Whatever the artist wants you to hear, plus 10, 20% probably, if you desire. And this particular subwoofer, I believe, only requires about 300-ish as far as the power output. So we'll have plenty of headroom with the amplifier I picked out. We could probably pick a smaller powered amp for the subwoofer side of things, but once again, specifically pick that for the bass boost adjustability section of this amp. So no big deal to have a little bit of extra headroom. And I think it's a kind of an odd shaped 11-inch subwoofer inside of that JBL bass hub. And this is the passive version. They do have some active versions as well.
So Matt, does that go ahead, Devin?
Yeah, that was one of the ones I was looking at, the spare tire, because like I said, with my requirements, because I have kids and I'm hauling around sports bags and school bags, and like the hatch is half full all the time. So
absolutely, it's very, very, very common these days. Like I said, for people to request that, and they're like, "Yeah, I just can't give up any space." Or if they don't have the spare tire like you have, then typically we'll do something that's down firing. So very low pros, but it's also removable, so you can throw things on top of it, remove it. So there's a few ways to address that particular issue where you just don't want to give up space. But since you have the spare tire that it can accommodate this would be an excellent choice for that.
And I'm assuming, based off the size and power, it's like the next level of the Integra is with the tech package, which has the ELS audio. I think it's like an 8-inch sub. Yeah, I was looking for like OEM-Plus, something maybe to rival that, maybe a touch more, based on the size and the power handling of this sub. I'm assuming it probably take on the ELS system without any issues.
Yeah, it's definitely going to have more bass than that. It's going to be more accurate, have more bass. Fortunate, unfortunate, depending on if you're a customer or a shop. Factory, one of the biggest problems with factory, even the upgraded audio systems, is that the biggest complaint is they don't have enough bass. Almost always. Very few vehicles that do actually give you a good amount of bass and accurate. Even if it is a lot, it's usually not accurate. So.
Cool.
Yeah, those high pass filters on front speakers and rear speakers were probably the best invent for the OEM side. So people stopped blowing up their OEM speakers, trying to get the bass out of them that just they cannot handle. And we've gotten a few requests here on the show where it's like, hey, I want to add bass by adding some new front speakers or rear speakers. And we're like, all right, well, that's not going to happen. And like Matt just said, even the OEM factory subwoofers aren't really that bassy. Definitely not enough to fill. Sometimes they do. It gives you that perceived like, oh man, I got a full sound, but it's definitely not something that you can feel at all. And at high volumes, it gets drowned out by the highs quite quickly, just because it takes so much power to drive a low frequency at high volume. So,
yeah, it's fortunately they didn't, like I said, they didn't brick wall this high pass setting, this feature in there. There are some vehicles, I think Range Rover is the first one that comes to mind, where they basically just brick wall you as far as like low frequencies, and there's just very little you can do to reintroduce those frequencies. So it
just doesn't exist.
Yeah, it just doesn't play it. So at least this one, they gave us a slope, and we can drag that back up with this amp. So that's
and I think we were talking about this before the show, Matt. It was like I asked you, I'm like, so is this similar to like the Epicenter, like Audio Control's Epicenter? How it's able to pull back up the bass that's not necessarily lost, but just simply not there. So, and you said yes. Well, you said it works different. It's different, but
this is a more accurate way to do it. But it is by far a more rare feature you find in amps is the adjustable version. But yeah, its Epicenter just goes about it differently.
So just to clarify on that, for anyone looking to upgrade this car on their own, and just add in a subwoofer, just simply tag in the rear speaker lines and adding an amp. What's going to be the typical result of that, Matt? Like, let's say you're using a line output converter.
Sure. So if you're using a line output converter, so the frequencies exist right there. They're just 12 decibels lower than, like, 40 hertz is, I think, 12 decibels lower than 80 hertz. So,
and 3 decibels is halving the output, right? So
yeah. So if you just simply use the line output converter and tag the rear speakers, or front speakers for that matter, and drove it straight into a monoblock amplifier, you would have to have probably 1,500 to 2,000 watts. I'm not doing the math, just off the top of my head, that just to make it play even with the rest of the audio system, you would have to have a tremendous amount of power. Maybe not that much, but a very high amount of power to make it play just even, let alone normally 1,000 watts to a subwoofer in a car like that is going to absolutely just rattle everything and go nuts. So yeah, it would exist. You could get it to play. It just, you would be wondering, man, did I just spend $1,000 on a 1,000-watt amp and to get not very much bass?
I mean, you would get bass. You get a lot of 60 to 80 hertz. It would be very like boomy sounding, but definitely not low. It would just sound muddy, right? So
yeah.
So
go ahead, Devin.
I'm sorry. So this feature is kind of similar to, I know Audio Control has an option for like the Acubase.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably pretty similar to that, I guess, more than the Epicenter.
No. So the Acubase is, it deals with EQ roll off more. So I think and I did actually kind of look at some audio control pieces for this. I'm not. There are particular instances where you want to use their equipment for stuff like this, but the Acubase feature, as you go up in the volume, so like low volume on the dial, you might have, if this is your bass frequency, I'll try to get my face out of there. Then at low volume, it would be this high, and as you turn up the volume, it
flattens
tends
out.
to even out. And so what the Acubase is trying to do is do this, but have it tend to stay about the same. So that way, when you add a big subwoofer into the vehicle and you're listening to at low volume, the subwoofer is not drowning everything out. Or you have to go over and turn the bass knob up and down as you're turning the volume up and down. So, that's what it's really trying to combat. It could probably reintroduce things like this amp can, but I haven't actually ever tried it in that application. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. When I saw your build there, Matt, I was like, all right, we're going to need to run some speaker wire from the amp to the sub. Why are you recommending 100 feet of wire, Matt?
Sure.
That's what I had to ask you before the show. I'm like, what's up with all this wire?
So you will have to run signal and return lines because we're going to be making the connections up front in the vehicle, and the amp is almost certainly going to have to go in the back section of the vehicle somehow. So yes, you will need to use this for your subwoofer connection as well. but that's going to be pretty short, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So this is just simply so we have 4 channels up, 4 channels back, and then 1 channel to the subwoofer, and 100 feet of 16 gauge oxygen-free tinned marine gray speaker wire should do the trick.
It should get you very close. I'd probably almost do 2 rolls of that, just because if I do 15 foot per channel times 4, I put it at like 120 plus another, let's say 5 or 10 for the subwoofer after you route it around the trunk and stuff like that. So yeah, no, you could also do 9-wire on like the initial signal path to the amp, and then run the higher gauge wire to the back to the behind the radio. You could kind of mix it up in a couple different ways, right?
Yeah, you could actually just use RCAs to do this as well, do the signal input, because we're creating so much resistance on the input section of the amplifier that the power output, because obviously the resistance is going to change what the power output of the factory, whatever amp is connected to it. You could use 20 gauge, 22 gauge speaker line, which is basically what's inside of a RCA cable, and it'll be just fine. So there's a few ways to handle this. This is just more of a generic, if you knew almost nothing, way to do it to be safe.
Cool.
And is that then just integration into that? Is there? I know some cars you can get harnesses. They can like a T harness and come off of it. Being that the car is new enough, is that available, or
it might be
straight cut at the source?
Yeah. So if it came into my shop, I would identify the signal, which lines, cut, solder, and go from there. There might be T harnesses out there for it, but it's a lot of the information is still unverified because it's a 2023. It's very new, and so you can usually take a few years to catch up as far as what will work from previous years on yours. So short answer is maybe it might exist.
Okay.
Yeah, and if not, there shouldn't be so many wires behind that radio to where it's typically your speaker wires are twisted. We're not going to offer installation advice, I guess. I'm going to get myself in trouble. The longer I talk, the more mistakes I'm going to make. So I said twisted wires, and immediately through my head I'm thinking CAN bus wiring and airbag and stuff like that I just don't want to give the false information that every twisted wire pair is it's a speaker wire.
Always test every single wire you're going to potentially use with a multimeter and have a good understanding of how to use it,
which it sounds like you have, Devin. So but yeah, I was just trying to figure out a way to kind of ease your mind on diving in behind that radio. Where, Matt, and again, we're not talking about installation, but where is that radio actually located in that dash?
I think it's attached to the back of the screen. It's like a single DIN chassis on that one.
Is it?
Yeah. So it's
like under the screen behind the kind of vents and stuff like that.
Yeah. So if you go about taking the screen out, it'll come out as one big long single DIN chassis. If it had the upgraded audio package, typically the factory amp would have been underneath the center console, kind of very forward against the firewall. But this one should be attached to the actual screen.
Perfect.
Do you know anything about you mentioned earlier about noise canceling? I don't know. My previous car had the premium audio system in it, so it definitely had the noise canceling. But since this one doesn't have the premium, do you know anything about that, if it does or not?
Yep. So all the schematics and everything for the non-amplified version, it doesn't have it. If it did have it, so there are versions, especially on the Honda side, that are non-amplified but do have ANC mics. Most notably, you usually see this in Accords. Some Civics I've run across it, but it's pretty rare. And if that's the case, then one, yes, you're going to need to disconnect it, because the ANC module will not understand a new subwoofer in the system. It will think it's road noise and will try to play combating frequencies. And so usually that module is behind the glove box. And so you just pull the glove box. Sometimes you can get to it from the side, like the passenger side of the dash. You pull panels off. But usually just by removing the glove box, it's a little silver module usually. But once again, if you're not familiar with them, do a lot of research and be careful. So you're not unplugging. Don't unplug random things.
Don't deploy it in your bag.
Yep. But typically that is the fix. It's very easy on Hondas and Acuras. You just simply unplug them, and that's it.
But you're saying this one most likely should not have one.
All the wiring schematics and all the information on this, and yeah, transparency. I haven't done this vehicle personally, so I'm simply going off other shops that I trust their information, and I'm also going off the factory wiring schematics for everything as far as things. And there's nothing to suggest that this has ANC in it.
Cool.
Yeah, that's like one of my biggest fears. Anytime jumping into a new car, especially if there's not a lot of information on it, it's like, oh man, like, am I gonna run into ANC? Am I gonna run into like fake engine noises or anything like that? Matt, does this car have those either?
It shouldn't have any fake engine noises.
All right.
And none that I've noticed.
Yeah, and yeah, you can usually tell, right? Like you're driving down, and you're like, man, the exhaust sounds great. No, it doesn't. Not when you get outside the car. So
outside the car, I can't hear it. Inside, I could hear it. It's weird.
Yeah, that's totally a thing, and it's Toyotas are really it's probably not too far off from when Honda and Acura is going to really implement that, because Toyota has started really doing that in their vehicles, the fake engine noise, the exhaust noise, and so we're having. So now I have a whole drawer of stuff just to be able to recode cars, whether it's Toyotas, Fords, BMWs, and so we have all these separate pieces just to go in and code out things that the dealership would normally have to do. It's just another level of tooling and experience you have to be able to work on modern cars. It's tough sometimes.
Yeah. Matt, I asked you to help me out with the BMW to turn off that fake engine noise, but you know what? I kind of like it. It makes me that perceived power of that little 2.5 liter.
There you go.
Or 3.5. Well, cool. Yeah. So we have all this product here. We have speakers, we have amp. Devin, is that kind of what you had in mind in terms of like your ideal upgrade, just like kind of amp and speakers?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, just boosting this overall sound. I was somewhat curious about DSP, but I mean, it's not necessarily. If you have good components and good, at least a decent source and good components, sometimes it's not necessarily needed. So,
I mean, it really comes down to your expectations, most of. So if you put this in and you're completely happy with it, then yeah, there's absolutely no reason for anything else, right? But if you're not, then DSP can totally change the sound, like 100%, change the imaging, change everything, but you're getting into a much higher cost. But with that said, there are some really affordable pieces on the market, like the Rockford Foxgate, like 360, little processors that go in line with the RCA path, that could definitely kind of be a good bang for the buck if you wanted to do something like that down the road. And then just have a trusted shop do the tune for you, or you could just do it yourself, right? But yeah, there are some options to add on to this system. So are you ready for the damage here? I did make a slide for that, maybe.
Go for it.
All right, let's see, Matt.
All the money.
All of it. Let's see, can I just put it there? Yeah, I could put it right there. So yeah. So Matt, I'll let you.
Sure. So yeah, we came out just under $2,000. Obviously, this doesn't include any tax or anything like that. But So it's a very nice audio system for under your budget technically. And install wise, if you decided not to do it, it can be a 1-to-1 depending on the shop and the level of quality that they put the stuff in. So if you
1-to-1 ratio, you mean? Like for
basically
dollar per install, for dollar per product?
Yeah. A good quality shop will typically run 50% product, 50% labor, or 60% product, 6 to 40% labor. Just kind of depends a little bit, maybe on what their overhead is and the type of guys they have. But that's typically, if you run into a shop that's 80% product, 20% labor, I would probably ask to see some installs and things, and do a little bit. They still could be good and just giving you really a lot of value, but that's a little more rare. So, and if you kind of touch back on the DSP part, if you decided that DSP is your bag, it's what you want to do, usually that tends to, product wise, that tends to bump the cost up anywhere from $500 to $800, and then you do have a little bit more labor because of tuning. But at that point, you'll have a full software program to address the high pass factory filters and things like that. So it's there's that, we'll leave that up to you if you decide you want to increase the budget, and you can always reach back out and we can make some recommendations if you decide DSPs what you want. We would just simply change the amp to have it would still be a 5-channel, but it would be built-in DSP software program.
Sure.
Oh, perfect. Devin, did you have any other questions for us?
No, this looks good.
Awesome.
Pretty much gonna, I think, hit everything I was looking for.
Nice. Well, cool.
Sweet. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Matt. We're wrapping up on the hour here. We got 3 minutes until we hit that limit of 1 hour. So again, I want to thank both of you guys. Matt, did you have any closing notes or anything before?
No, I appreciate you putting the inquiry in, Devin. It's been a fun time building it for you and great talking with you. So thanks for being on.
Yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any other questions regarding the build or anything like that. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions for you.
Awesome.
So cool.
Great.
All right, guys.
Well, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, not a problem. Thank you all, and hope you guys have a great day and stay warm.
Right.
So,
all right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Andrew.
Bye.
Thanks. All right. So that has been the conclusion of episode number 6. We featured Devin here with his 2023 Acura Integra A-Spec. It ended up being a pretty simple build, just amplifier with some speakers and a subwoofer that went into the spare tire well. But the biggest thing about that was the fact that we had to, I'm still trying to get this camera to focus, had to work on trying to integrate into the OEM stereo that had the issue with the high pass filter on the lower frequencies. So trying to stick within those ranges, try to boost that sub up without needing a ton of power to do so. And I think Matt did a great job on doing that. So thank you, Matt. And thank you, Devin, for being a guest on today's show. Again, if you're looking for a car audio system for any car on the road, please feel free to reach out. It's a completely free design consultation here online. Again, we don't have any incentive to try to sell you anything or try to sell you installation or anything like that. We have no kind of bias in a way to try to sell you something that's going to be easy for us to install or that's going to make us a lot of money in terms of profitability on the product line. So we come at this from the angle of, hey, we just want to do the same stuff that we'd want in our car, come hell or high water, really. So, but with that said, thank you all for joining. Again, it's December 26th, 2023. This has been episode number 6 of Easy Design. Thank you all, and have a great new year.